The voice of sharing Durian ASEAN.
Hey, good morning. How are you? Apa khabar? Especially to Bruneians there and Malaysians and all the other countries in Southeast Asia. Selamat pagi. Good morning to you all. This is Arlene reporting from Durian ASEAN. So we are going to start our day with our ASEAN breakfast call on the top 10 ASEAN news. So first off is by Jakarta Post. It was reported on yesterday, 2 days before, which is the Shi'i protests on anti-Shia declaration in Bandung. So the story is like this. Shia followers in Bandung, which is in West Java, had filed a protest with local authorities over a planned declaration by the Anti-Shia National Alliance. It's actually a national alliance against the existence of Shia in Indonesia, which was scheduled for Sunday. And they fear that all these Shia followers, that the event could actually incite hatred against, their own identity, which is the Shia minority sect, Islamic identity. So he said that we cannot hate something that is not physically there. It was said by the chairman of the Indonesia's Ahlul Bait Association, or IJAB. The person's name is Hasti Rahadja. The thing is like this. He expressed his fear that on the Sunday's declaration would not so much create hatred against the Shia community as a whole, but more against individual Shia followers. And we know hate crimes usually will result in, some violence against individuals. So they say that, okay, we respect freedom of speech, but the statement has potential to incite hatred. So the problem is like this. How far we want to go in terms of freedom of speech? I mean, we all human beings have the right to say whatever they want, but whatever they want, will it implicate other people's freedom as well? And especially freedom to profess, whatever religion that they want to profess. And the person said, he said that reiteration the importance of maintaining calm ahead of July's presidential elections. So, again, this is a political move by the Anti-Shia National Alliance. I mean, see in this way, it's the presidential election. Everyone is so gung-ho, so wanting to, make some impression towards the voters, and sometimes, making negative, statements would, get more votes. But is it really the right thing to do? Previously, in West Java, Police Chief Inspector General M. Iriawan said on Friday that the police has not received any information about the event. And they said that there's no permit for the event. If they do not hold a permit, we will take the necessary actions. That's regarding on the declarations. And a human rights campaigner also agreeing with Shia followers. They condemned the scheduled declarations. And their stance is firm. They said that we condemn the move because it's a form of sectarianism, which is kind of true, that could fuel conflict. Said by Ahmad Fuad Fahnani of the Ma'arif Institute for Cultural and Humanity. Well, the good thing about Indonesia is they have quite a vibrant civil society, and their human rights campaigners are very vocal, especially when it comes to vilifying minority sects and, stopping minorities from having the right to profess to profess their religious beliefs. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, the government is openly promoting sectarianism against minority Shia, Ahmadiyya, and other minority faiths as well, and even non-Muslims faith. While Indonesia seems to be following the footsteps of its neighbor, even though Indonesia itself is a multicultural ethnicity and faith nations, I personally believe that they should definitely embrace the spirit of Pancasila, which is on the foundation of unity in diversity. In Malaysia as well, I mean, we should definitely see that we are not just an Islamic majority population of faith. We are also a country with multicultural and multi-ethnic as well as multi-religious society, and we should accept that there are people people are different. Individuals are different. In other words, we should embrace unity in diversity. So the next one, also reported by Jakarta Post, is on Indonesian language gaining favors among foreigners. So foreigners are actually, interested to learn more about Indonesian language, which is good, which is great actually, because I personally believe that Indonesian language, with its majority population, one of the largest in the world, has gained quite a reputation as a global language due to it being the most spoken language, one of the most spoken language in the world. And Indonesia also is one of the most populous nation in the world as well, also being the most populous Muslims population in the world. And so dozens of people from around the world were busy preparing food and beverage to sell on a hot Thursday at the university compound in Depok, while others tries to offer food in broken Indonesian. So this situation is quite, average in probably among, average Indonesian society. But the interesting part is all these food sellers are actually non-Indonesian. They are foreigners. Like, for example, this Korean lady spoke Indonesia, which I translated into English is, "Come, buy our dish. They are delicious." Although she said in a broken Indonesian language, but seems like people are getting interested to learn more about Indonesian language. And also at that area, some distance from the food stall, a number of foreigners were anxious looking at sheets of paper, murmuring, practicing speeches. So it's a very good development. In fact, she and the other foreigners are enrolling a language course called Indonesian Language for Foreign Speakers, commonly known as BIPA, at the School of Humanities, University of Indonesia. And BIPA has over 250 students hailing from various countries, namely Japan, South Korea, the United States, Australia, Iran, Turkey, Thailand, China, Philippines. I think there's a lot to say it all now. So more than half of the students are Japanese and Koreans. Quite interesting. And BIPA lecturer Rahmi Tri Sutanti said that the students came from various backgrounds, with some having been posted in embassies in Indonesia as diplomats, others exchange students in employees at international companies as well as homemakers. But he also, felt a bit sad in a way. He said that, to be honest, I felt the Indonesian have a lack of appreciation for the Indonesian language. We Indonesians are not really proud of our own language. It was spoken by the head of BIPA. Actually, I think personally, being a Malaysian, the same situation can be said about the Malaysian language, which is Malay. I mean, although we have sort of a different kind of situation when it comes to our national language, because at one hand, is not really gaining traction as due to people seeing English as the more advantage or economically advantage language. At another hand, Malay has also becoming more and more exclusive in terms of the way and the language is being spoken. Like a lot of the words, for example, religious words are considered exclusively for certain religion. While at the same time, Malay language is not being openly promoted to the world. Very little Malay translated books, very little in fact, very little books in Malay as well. So these are the areas that probably Malaysians have to, Malaysians have to understand that, to popularize a language, especially to make it as a global language, it should be more than just being proud of your own language. I think you have to work on it, make the language a more popular language to learn by foreigners. So next off, we have to flow to Brunei. And by the way, today is the day where the Sharia law in Brunei will be implemented, which is on the 22nd of April. So it was reported a few days ago that Brunei is planning to stone gays under the Sharia law that will be implemented today. And this actually reels United Nations a lot. It was reported by RT.com. The story was about this. The Sultan of Brunei has announced that those committing same-sex relations could be stoned to death. And the draconian law has brought condemnation from the United Nations, with a tiny Asian oil-rich nation having a virtual moratorium on the death penalty since 1957. So now, among all the Southeast Asian countries, Brunei will be the first among all of us to implement the Sharia law, which would include stoning. And stoning now is set to be allowed for a range of sexual offenses such as rape, adultery, sodomy, extramarital sexual relationship, and so on. And all these are actually morality law, a way to curb, individuals in terms of the way they conduct their morality publicly or even privately. And the United Nations have been very critical on the move. In fact, in their website, they wrote a long statement regarding on why they are against the Sharia law, which will be implemented today, starting from today. So, a spokesman for the Office of the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights said the application of the death penalty for such a broad range of offences contravenes international law, which is true. There are many declarations, conventions, and so on that and all other universal laws under the United Nations that condemn such offences, especially under the Sharia law that is being written here. And the death sentence could also be imposed for insulting any verses of the Quran and Hadith, blasphemy, declaring oneself a prophet on non-Muslim, and murder. So there's a range of offences that could result a person to be sentenced to death in Brunei. And the new law will not only be applied to Muslim, but we will actually be applied to non-Muslim as well. Although at this stage right now, it is reported that Muslims who make up the 2/3 of the populations of just over 400,000 of the whole populations of Brunei will be the focus of the law. And on the other hand, under the Sharia law, they also want to implement a Sharia dress code. This is crazy. We saw in countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Afghanistan where they have niqab, burqa as their dress code. And for this, Brunei, I'm not sure what kind of dress code they are thinking of implementing to their own citizens, but in this section titled Indecent Behavior, stated that any person who commits an act of indecent behavior, which would include, wearing certain kind of outfit that, deem indecent, in public places is guilty of an offense and shall be liable or convicted to a fine not exceeding 2,000 Bruneian dollars and imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or both. So an act is deemed indecent if it tarnishes the image of Islam, corrupts moral standards, causes negative influence, or upset eyewitnesses. That is a pretty broad statement, isn't it? And anyone who organizes, persuades, or encourages others to commit any act of indecent behavior is also guilty of an offense and shall be liable or convicted to a fine not exceeding 800,000 Bruneian dollars, imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years of both. That is a pretty heavy fine and punishment for something that is as like and as wearing the wrong kind of dress code. So and meanwhile also Haji Hardi Fadila, which represented the spokesperson, which is the spokesperson of the Sharia law offences, also encouraged the public to ask for a warrant card when dealing with any Sharia law enforcers. And there have been cases of people impersonating Sharia law. I guess these are people who just believing too much in having the law, taking the law into their own hands. And he said that if you are approached by someone who claim to be a Sharia law enforcement officers, you just have to ask for their warrant card. And remember, there are no compound fines in Sharia penal code order. So that's it. In terms of Brunei's plan to implement the Sharia law, they have a whole law under their wing there. So, and also it was reported by the Independent UK. They are quite concerned as Brunei will bring in system of Islamic law with punishment that includes dismemberment of limbs and stoning to death. The Sultan of Brunei, which is the one of the world's wealthiest ruler and a close ally of Britain, will this week oversee his country's transition to a system of Islamic law with punishment that includes flogging, the dismemberment of limbs, and stoning to death. This 67-year-old absolute monarch declared last year that he wanted to introduce a full Sharia system in his oil-rich country, and warned critics who took to social media sites to complain that they could be prosecuted under this new law. But the thing is, the law is not applicable, to royals themselves. So is it really a fair law? That is to be seen. And the Sharia is actually a defense. To my understanding, the decision to introduce Sharia law and reintroduce the death penalty has been condemned by NGOs and legal rights campaigners who say that the new law will breach international law, which is what has been spoken earlier in the earlier news. And the development could pressure on Britain to rethink its close relationship with Brunei, which is a former colony and a British regiment based in the country. The last surviving UK regiment station in East Asia is paid for entirely by the Sultan. So it is unclear precisely what is motivating the Sultan, who also served as a country's prime minister and assumed the throne in 1967. But in a speech in February this year to mark the country's National Day holiday, he claims that the system of an absolute Islamic monarch acted as a stoning and effective firewall against against the challenges of globalization. Now you see it. Now, yes, I see it. So the Sharia law itself is not about Sharia law itself. It's actually more deeper than that. In my understanding, at least based on my opinion, the Sharia law is actually a defense mechanism against globalization, and especially against liberalism and westernization, which we are seeing it in Malaysia as well. And so that's why the focus is more and more on morality punishment, physical morality punishment, which includes, sexual relationship, unlawful sexual relationship, and also other sort of sinful behavior, I would say. I think personally this is a colonization siege mentality. In a way, they believe that in order for them to preserve the sanctity of their own identity, which is, I would say, the Islam and Malay Brunei identity, having a Sharia law would definitely be the strongest defense mechanism against this so-called westernization and liberalism. I think the development is catching up a lot in Malaysia as well, and we is only we can only see the development in Brunei to see whether the people they actually accepted the law or not. Okay, so from the laws regarding on Sharia, we move on to Manila Bulletin, which is on security security pack in the Philippines. So new security pack up with Obama's visit. Yeah, Obama is actually having a Southeast Asia tour, I think, because he will be visiting not just Philippines, he will also come to Malaysia. So they are finalizing a new security pact, investment and trade agreement, and financing of quality infrastructure projects across the country. This should be on top of President Benigno S. Aquino wish list, I would say, when he meets the United States President Barack Obama during the latter's visit to the Philippines next week. So according to Professor Richard Hedariant of the Antonio de Manila's Political Science Department, the most important concern of the Aquino administration should be about negotiating the framework agreement on enhanced defense cooperation and rotational presence with Washington. This will ensure a robust American commitment to come to the Philippines rescue in the event of conflict in the West Philippine Sea. And I think this is justifiable. I mean, we all see throughout for a couple of weeks since China has been quite invasive in terms of the South China Sea, and having a balance of superpowers with America at the side would definitely calm down China's territorial and maritime dispute with Philippines in particular and ASEAN in general. And other than that, given the heightened tensions of their decision to file the memorial at ILLOS, International Tribunal for the Law of Sea, which was filed a couple of weeks ago when China started to be quite invasive in terms of the waters in South China Seas, and sustained and equivalent. They need a more sustained and unequivocal American support for their territorial claims, which was told by Hedarian at the Manila Bulletin yesterday. Given the lack of inclusive growth in the countries, this is on the other hand, Aquino should push the U.S. to invest in their manufacturing sector, which is crucial to generating quality, large-scale employment. I think this is a good development because in Philippines, they need to spur up their manufacturing industry, and having the U.S. to invest in it would definitely boost the economic growth of the country. And investment in infrastructure also should be on top of the discussion, on the other hand, between the two leaders when they meet next Monday. Move on to Vietnam news. The university grad eager to work on development of poor areas. This is a pretty confusing headlines because the way that the story goes is a bit different. The the story goes like this. A new government program sending 600 recent university graduates to help boost development of the poor in the ethnic minority areas is on the right track. It was spoken by the Ministry of Home Affairs, Nguyen Thai Bint. And the minister answered questions by the public on televisions on April 13, said that the 600 what this deputy chairman program has so far attracted 580 young people. That is a pretty positive development, I would say. And the project aim, of course, to boost rural socioeconomic development and reducing hunger, poverty, and build new rural areas. But on the other hand, this is the interesting part of the news, which is they were concerned about how the volunteers would be paid, which got the ministry a bit uneasy, because an undergraduate working in the mountainous district under the program complained about the poor pay, around Vietnamese dollar of 5 million, which is nearly $250, which he said is not enough for him to cover the essential expenses like healthcare coverage, school fees for his children, and he's actually considering quitting the program and getting another job. So this is one of the areas or challenges that the ministry needs to tackle, because the fact is the problem of poverty and lack of development is not so much on programs. Having more of such programs, but it's actually a structural economic problem that the government has to tackle within its own policy. See it in this way: the minimum pay offered by the program is actually only 5.8 million Vietnamese dollar, which is equivalent to 272 ringgit. And the maximum pay is 8,000 million Vietnamese dollar, which is equivalent to 376 ringgit. So it's so obvious that, the government should realize this. It's an economic structural problem as manifested by the undergraduate. If the government is eager to help the poor, and also helping, the undergraduates who is helping the poor, they should definitely solve the structural economic issues, and this would include decent wage, and a higher minimum wage, and also, things like universal healthcare and educations. These areas are better at solving poverty than just having welfare, short-term welfare programs, or even long-term welfare programs. Okay, last off is a news reported by the Channel News Asia. So at least one killed in tour bus crash in Pahang. So this was a news for I think last 3 days ago, a bus traveling from Malaysia to Singapore crashed into a ravine on Sunday and killing at least one person, according to the Malaysian news report. The New Straits Times reported that the victim was from the United Kingdom, and the double-decker bus was also carrying 38 passengers, including people from Singapore, United States, France, China, and India. So again, Pahang police said that all injured passengers have been rescued and sent to different hospitals. And the accident actually happened around 4:30 p.m. along the Jalan Kuantan Segamat in Pahang State. So, the accident aside, again, another bus tragedy in Malaysia, and unfortunately, I think this is something that has been quite immune among us Malaysians, because, again, as I said again, another bus tragedy, and of course the ministry and people will give their comments for a couple of days and then they forget about it. Nothing will be done, and the same kind of situation will happen, maybe to a more severe extent, or to or like this, probably just kill one. Probably one person will be killed and all that, but the fact is, the lack of good driving manners continues because it's just the fact is very little implementation of the law, very little, focus on check and balance towards all these bus companies. So I would expect another tragedy that will come into the picture, and the same thing will happen, and the cycle goes on. And so the next news, which is the last news, is reported by the Star. The MH192 lands safely in KLIA. So a Malaysian Airlines flight bound for Bangalore, which was forced to make a turn back, landed safely at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport early Monday. So the MAS actually tweeted that the Boeing 737-200 aircraft landed at 1:56 a.m. after its right-hand landing gear malfunctioned on take-off. So MAS has also issued a statement that the Flight MH192 that has departed from KLIA at 10:09 p.m. bound from Bangalore has to make an air turn, and the aircraft was carrying a total of 166 people, including 159 passengers and 7 crew members. So the MH192 has been retimed to depart KLIA at 3:30 p.m. Monday and arrive at Bangalore at around 5 p.m. on the same day. So we are glad that everyone is, including the flight itself, is all safe and sound. And we hope that no future tragedy, especially since the incident of the missing flight MH370. And we hope the passengers and also the families of the passengers of MH192 are all safe and sound. Anyway, this is Arlene reporting from Durian ASEAN. Thanks for listening to our top 10 news, and see you tomorrow, same time, same date. Bye.